Welcome back to another episode of Just a Squirrel Looking for a Nut, trying to get out of this rut. It feels strange saying this without Scott Mason, who's having some technical difficulties in the background, but as most of you that are tuning in right now can somewhat relate that whenever him and I choose to say the name together, we oftentimes mess it up. So this is probably one of the only times that it will be close to 100% perfection. But today's topic and today's theme that I wanted to have a conversation with all of you about revolves around this concept of gratitude. And in particular, why do we feel grateful? And is gratitude really a necessary component to one's life? And the person that we wanted to have a conversation with, who is our special guest today, his name is Casey Berman. Him and I have been connected for quite some time now, as well as Scott Mason, and have actually found ways to collaborate on many other projects. And with that said, I wanted to bring him onto the show and have a conversation around why do we feel grateful. Casey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for being a part of it. And
yeah,
while we're waiting on Scott Mason here to figure out 2021 related problems in the world, I've been there so many times.
I know.
It's funny and it's frustrating. Like when that happens, you're all prepared, you show up, and then just boom. Like the one thing that you need, which is a computer, it just stops working.
Just stops. I've totally been there so many times. So he'll come on. He'll make a grand entrance, I'm sure. So
I'm sure of that. That might be a good opportunity actually to even explore whether or not he was grateful in that moment for what was happening. But I'm glad that you were able to join us. I'm glad that we've been able to have this space in this conversation around gratitude. I know for me, personally speaking, it's something that took me quite some time to really understand, and more so, I think, put it into practice. There were many times where I just kind of went through life without having a sense of gratitude. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is because I took those things for granted. I took the impact that people had in my life. I took the influence that they've had on my own journey for granted. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until a couple years ago that I came across a book called 365 Thank Yous by John Kralik. And essentially it was him telling his journey of how when things were going rough in his life, he just started to write thank yous. Yeah. And then in a way like that reversed the energy. So at first I was a little bit skeptical. I read the whole book and I was like, is this really true? Can this really happen? And there he is, Scott Mason. You're still muted, Scott. You still got
muted.
You still got one more step to go. It's all good. But anyways, there's this book, 365 Thank Yous, that I was reading. And one of the things that I ended up discovering through that book was the action of choosing to be grateful and actually reversing many of the circumstances throughout my life. And that was a moment where I just realized that there is something I can do about it. There is a way I can use gratitude to transform my life.
Yeah. Scott, are you there?
I am here. Thank you, everybody. I'm in the house, have dealt with some technical issues, but they appear to have magically and mysteriously resolved. I'm grateful for that, by the way.
Do you feel grateful for having the ability to join despite the technical difficulties?
I am grateful for you all. I am grateful for my mic and my camera and my light, even though they act out sometimes. I am grateful to be a squirrel. And most importantly, I am grateful for the folks in the audience.
Yes. Fantastic. Well, I am grateful and expected a grand entrance from you, Scott, and we were not disappointed. So,
well, I was given a grand entrance with the mute on. That'll make a good YouTube video.
Exactly. Oleg, you talk about grateful, and it's a great topic. And for me, for those who don't know me, my name is Casey Berman. I'm based here in San Francisco. Former attorney, done a number of things. I think one of the main things how Oleg knew me was to leave law behind, which is a community I created to help unhappy attorneys leave the law. We've helped over 100 have to leave the law for non-law careers and created a whole course to help them do it. And so, through being a former attorney, I think one thing that we focus on is the definition, right? And Scott, you'll know this. Like, all right, if we're going to debate about something or unpack something, or what is it first? Like, let's start there. And so, how do we define gratitude? How do we define being grateful? And I think there's a number of ways. I think one, that you touched on, Oleg, is saying thank you, which is nice. It's not the deepest way, which I'll get into a little bit more, but it's saying thank you. It's showing appreciation. It's being polite, whether you're paying lip service to it or it's superficial, or there really is that deep feeling, but that's a start. Like, that's a great place to go. And I wish everyone in the world would do it. If everyone in the world took gratitude to that level, it'd be a much different place. And I'm definitely guilty of not saying thank you as much. For me, and sort of in my personal development, has been to go deeper than that. And what does that really mean? And what really jumped out to me was that point about transformation. And I think when I am grateful, it's more than just saying thank you, but it's literally a shift in perspective. It's literally thinking about things differently. So instead of looking at my house with my kids and my wife and saying what a mess it is, I wish it was bigger, I wish it was remodeled, literally just appreciating it for what it is and being thankful for it. Doesn't mean I don't want more. It doesn't mean I can't be ambitious and want more, right? So looking at my business, the money I'm making, looking at how successful I've been, or it's easy to keep up with the Joneses in so many ways. So for me, the definition of gratitude and being grateful that I've kind of been adopting, struggling with, trying to see if it works for me, is how can I shift my perspective, my viewpoint on life, or literally my thoughts and my beliefs, from one of lack and I just want more and why don't I have that, to one where I'm happy with what I have, very happy, very at peace with it, but I'm also eager for more, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing to be eager, but I'm at peace and happy and aligned with what I have, but I'm also eager for more. And it's easy for me to say it intellectually, but emotionally, it's really tough to be happy with what you have and not look at what you don't. So let me pause there, but that was sort of the definition that I've been thinking about, and I'd love to hear how other people are defining it.
Well, it sounds like Winnie Patrickowski, who is a new person. Oh, well, hello. It is nice to meet you, Winnie. And you are, I really am a fan of your nephews. And so by default, I am a fan of yours. Welcome to the show. And I'm glad that you agreed with Casey, because he is always right. Caleb has also joined us. I was getting the CAs mixed up. Caleb, it is good to see you. He has a great podcast, and it is called the Ignite Podcast. And I just had an episode featuring me just dropped. So, but Caleb is an incredible thinker, as is Casey. And it is good to have you here, Caleb. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I was going to say, from one former lawyer to another, it probably makes the most sense for Scott to follow that up.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you define, when you think about gratitude, it's easy to talk about these terms. I mean, how are you defining it? How are you even starting to get your arms around it?
It is actually a surprisingly deep topic, in light of the fact that we actually tend to think about it very superficially. I believe a component of gratitude is really just, as you mentioned earlier, greasing the social wheels. It's one of those things that we say, in particular, thank you, that makes people feel good and that makes them feel appreciated, and that shows that we are attempting to not take for granted whatever they've contributed to our lives, whether it is a favor that they've done for us or just their existence. And I would describe that as almost just a passing feeling state. Oh, I'm appreciative. It was nice that they did that for me, and I am acknowledging that out loud. Appreciation is and can be transactional in its approach, and the sort of things that you're talking about and that I'm actually talking about in the prior sentence or two is really a transactional approach to appreciation. Sometimes it can be a little, or even more significantly in depth. than that. It can be a longer term understanding of the fact that the universe, Providence, God, however you point it, or just your existence in the world has given you something that you have no particular entitlement to, but that is still a good thing, or at least something that you experience positively. It can be something beautiful. It can be a nice sweater that your wife just got you, if you wear sweaters. I don't, but some people do. I won't talk about them on this show, at least. And then it might be something a little bit more substantial or more heartfelt than that. My husband, ever since the early days of our relationship, because he used to own a restaurant, figured out quite quickly that I'm a terrible cook. And so he took over that function in the household. And he loves it. Every now and then in this little studio apartment that I live in, I will look over at the kitchen where he will be cooking. Usually something for me, because I eat big. And I've got an appetite, and I'm proud of that. Yeah, I do. Challenge me on it. I'll take you on. And, I look at him and I think about all of the incredible meals that he has made for me without asking anything over the course of the 23 years that we have been together. And he does it as an expression of love. He does it as an expression of connection, as a way of providing service to someone who he really cares about. That is a deeper, more substantial, long-lasting, and affecting gratitude. And sometimes I will just say that, and sometimes I will respond with action. Sometimes I will just bask in it and appreciate it. Then I would say that beyond that, there's an even more existential level of gratitude. And those are for the things that not only have we not earned, that we're not entitled to, but that are of the very nature of our existence. That it's almost impossible for us to even imagine carrying the emotion of gratitude without, because without these things, we wouldn't even be able to conceptualize that. Self-awareness, language, abstract thinking, and at a fundamental level, our existence. And even beyond that, the existence of whatever nature it is, of the very universe that we're in. Those are things that I believe trigger gratitude, but the gratitude for that goes as to the very understanding of our existence. And it's so, in my experience, profound and big that I get overwhelmed by it. I don't even really have a feeling state for it, except to not take that for granted. Mm-hmm. Because based on a lot of models and for all of the incomplete knowledge that we have about the universe or our existence or the existence of our planet or of our little lives, any of those things could end in an instant.
At what point do either of you think thank you loses its meaning?
Insincerity.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. There are times in which, for instance, I've mentioned this before. I worked for someone once who was very sweet. Everything was little ribbons and rainbows and fairy dust and cherubic smiles and giggles and twinkly eyes. And you'd look down after a conversation with this person at your stomach and realize it had been sliced open. There was blood all on the floor. And you're like, how in the hell did that happen? And thank you was a very sweet an extraordinarily insincere way of insulting or asserting control. Mm-hmm. Oh, what a piece of garbage that you gave me. Well, thank you. So that's one way. Number two, it ceases to have meaning, or it ends up being something negative if it is taken so lightly, or if it's not backed up by any commitment other than the words itself. And I would even say, if it's done without any real emotion that connects it to the actual feeling state of appreciation. One example of this, and I've seen it a lot, and I'm sure you all have too, and I really try and urge people that have worked for me not to be this way, and I try not to be this way, is when you do some huge favor for someone and you say, oh, I'm going to introduce you to someone, or here is a document that I've prepared for you, or here's this, that I've done for you, and then you just get back a simple email, thank you, with a period mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, thanks a lot. I'll remember that next time I want to do you a favor. That thanks means nothing to me. Am I the only one that feels that way, folks?
Yeah. No, with it, it gives you an opportunity when someone does something for you to respond in kind, and be authentic. And I think, a short thank you with a period is oftentimes another example of a power play. You did all this work and I'm just going to respond. I think, Oleg, to your point about how does it lose its meaning?
Mm-hmm.
For me, what Scott was talking about, I've also heard are people who are sort of bliss ninnies who, and I've been this way, who life is good, life is great, and I only want to think positively, and I don't want to think bad thoughts. And for me, when gratitude will lose its meaning, when you feel like it's something that you can always attain. And here's what I mean by that is, when you think about happiness, if my goal is happiness, and happiness is this idea of just constant pleasure, free of pain, well, that's not going to ever happen. The world is up and down. It's a cycle. You have up, you have down. I mean, an EKG meter measures our heart. And when you're flatlining on an EKG meter, you're dead. There's a reason there's up and downs. It shows you that you're living. And it's up to us to determine whether an up is good or an up is down. That's the meaning that we give to things. So it's really, this idea is really questioned whether I want happiness, because if pure joy isn't something that's really attainable in life, that I'm just going to be happy and smiling all the time, then is it even attainable? Should I even want 100% pure happiness? And so the same thing with gratitude is, it loses its meaning when you're kind of doing gratitude for the sake of gratitude, or you're doing it superficially, or like Scott's talking about, you're doing it for a power play, or you're doing it to grease the social wheels. I wrote that note down. So then I think it loses its meaning when it isn't aligned inside of you with some level of peace. Well, what is peace? Peace is quiet. Peace is just confidence. Peace is alignment, right? And it's hard for words to, it's hard for, language is so inexact. As much as we think language is such a great thing, and it is, it's also inexact. You just kind of know it when you feel it. And so gratitude that sort of comes with an authenticity, with an alignment, with just pure love and joy. When you've given that gratitude or felt that grateful, like with the meals, Scott, when you realize that. And you also know when you're just kind of BSing. And so it's pretty easy, I think, to tell when, from your own standpoint, when that gratitude, just like happiness, when that gratitude has lost its meaning. And, as Scott gave examples, it's pretty easy to tell, or it can be easy to tell when it's coming from another person. So it goes back to your point about gratitude being transformative, Oleg, that you feel it. You just, you know it when it's true.
Caleb ties the concept of gratitude and thank you and thank yous to being humble. Do you too believe that there's a connection between humility and gratitude? And I say that as someone who knows everything.
Well, I'll start. I mean, when I think of humility, I think humility gets too much attention, if you will. And I don't mean to say that as a D-bag. I don't know if we can say that on air, but I don't mean to say it as some ego searching kind of schmucky guy. I'm not that way at all. But humility for me, I think, can be misinterpreted as playing small. And that's something that I've struggled with. And so I agree, it's just how we define humility. If humility is sort of playing small and deflecting compliments and oh no, I don't know about that. Oh, it's just little old me. Oh, I just threw this on. You know, Scott, one thing I just love about you is you come in, you're unabashed, you're self-deprecating, and you just right, exactly. You know, and it's admirable, it's inspiring, right? And so I think there's sort of a dark side to humility. Maybe that's too strong to say, but I think there's a level of humility that keeps us locked down and sort of programmed and too small. I've suffered for it. I still do. I think if you look at humility in more of a healthy way, I would agree with Caleb that it's this level of kind of connectedness, this level that we're all one. I've got my own strengths, they've got their strengths, and I don't want to dismiss it and diminish it, but at the same time realizing that, you know, one analogy I use is that we're all different geysers, but we all come from the same water source, right? It's all the same water underneath. We're just all different holes where it comes up. So that's sort of an element of humility that I like. And I would agree with Caleb that if you got this healthy sense of humility that we're all connected, then I think appreciation only reinforces that connection. So.
Winnie, I think, put this brilliantly. Humility can be a place to hide and not be authentic. And the little old me sort of thing reminds me of one of my favorite stories. There was a certain female singer who was very popular in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, who won some Lifetime Achievement Award. Now, I didn't actually see this, but according to a friend of mine that watched it, she walked down this grand staircase on TV to get the award, and she was wearing like a glamour gown that stretched behind her like 20 feet. And she had like, you know, this massive wig on and was dripping in jewels and was sparkling and all done up. And when she got to the mic to get the award, she literally said, "Me? little me?" As if she was surprised at getting the award that she had put on a 20-foot ball gown for.
Yeah, right.
Right. And I think that's exactly what Winnie's talking about.
Totally. Authentic. I think Winnie nailed it.
But, you know, another thing that I am sort of curious about, and I see that Laura Staley is in the house. Boy, we are really hitting the mark with the gang on the show tonight. I just love it. What do you all think? And Oleg, it's time to pick on you because you have been sickeningly silent tonight. What do you think about when someone gets a compliment on the subject of gratitude and they respond by saying, and George, well, a certain leader of the United States at one point said this, you know, would say this a lot. They would get some massive compliment or, you know, have some huge victory, let's say in a war, and say something like, "I'm humbled to receive this honor and recognition by the entire world." What do you think that they mean when they say that? Because I'll be honest, Oleg, you've got to tell me, I've never understood what in the hell you're talking about when you say that. You don't say it, but when people say that.
So I think for me, there are a couple of things that come to mind. And first one is I love being a sponge in conversations like this because not everything requires my opinion. So if anything, it's just that's what I choose to practice. That's where I'm at in my journey of my life. But I think for me, when it comes to compliments, so I've had a very interesting journey. And what I mean by that is there were many years throughout my life that I actually struggled to accept compliments. So when someone would express their gratitude to me for helping them or helping them achieve X, Y, and Z, I would brush it off. They would say, "Thank you for helping me get through X, Y, and Z," or "You really changed my life," in whatever the way was. And I never really took those seriously. And I think the reason why is because much of my past revolved around being in situations where gratitude really wasn't expressed as much. And I think after a while, in my opinion, that became kind of my operating system, so to speak. And it wasn't until years down the road where I was able to see other people practice gratitude and then practice receiving the compliments as well as giving the compliments. I was able to have a better understanding of how it is that makes them feel and how, in a way, I think it makes the whole concept of gratitude even stronger when I'm able to receive it and when I'm able to give it. Because if I'm always giving, what I've realized throughout my experience is that I truly don't know how to receive. Mm-hmm. And that was a journey. I started with the thank yous. I'll never forget this. I started with receiving thank yous and then giving thank yous. So when someone would say, "Hey, thank you for helping me," or "Thank you for making this introduction," I stopped brushing them off and I said, You're welcome. I'm glad I was able to help. And I remember initially it was a strange feeling inside. I don't know if the two of you or anyone else that's listening can relate, but it was one of those moments where I remember this in receiving that compliment, like something within me. You know how sometimes when you watch a movie or when you're in a situation that really touches you, and like you can't help but just like tears start streaming down your face. That was one of those moments. And I don't know why. I don't know why, if it was me experiencing some sort of sense of acceptance or belonging, or I really felt connected, or maybe that was the purest form of authenticity. And so being in that, but to tie it to your comment, Scott, the humbled. So I'm not here to judge. I'm really in no position to judge anyone else's experiences or journeys. But personally speaking, I wouldn't use that. And I wouldn't use that because I think, in my opinion, that's brushing it off. That's not fully receiving it. And it's not just that there's only one way to receive a compliment. But I think you can feel it. You could sense when someone, Casey brought up the whole writing the thank you with a period. I've done that. I've been on that end. And I think part of the reason why, and it still happens sometimes, is when I'm in the flow of things and I'm responding like, one email after another, one text after another, it actually takes time to process when it is that you use a question or explanation or any of these other things. So I'll just keep typing away. If I'm texting, double tap, and then that just registers as a period, and then you keep going. So to a degree, I think the written communication, it's even harder for me to express gratitude unless I form it into some sort of story, or unless the person truly understands who I am, in which case I can communicate that through a sentence.
Laura Staley makes an interesting point that I would like to explore. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be transparent here. I know Laura Staley. I think all three of us who are hosting the show tonight know Laura Staley. Laura Staley, I think all of us would agree, is an extraordinarily beautiful spirit. And I say that because in assessing and raising the question I have about a remark she made, I want to clarify why I am addressing it the way I am. Laura says, receiving compliments expands the heart. It does not give you a big head. I would say that's true if you are Laura Staley. However, many people I feel are not, or I would be curious as to hear what Laura, Winnie, or Caleb, or anyone else who is watching or listening tonight think about that remark in light of what I'm about to say. I think it was in 2008. I think this is when this was. Maybe it was a little earlier than that, but I think it was 2008. A man named John Edwards ran for president as a Democratic Party nominee. And he was caught in some scandals and was ultimately bounced out of the competition because of these scandals. And he wasn't able to get any real support. And one of the things when he was later interviewed about this, I believe he was having an affair, if I recall right, on his wife, who was a cancer survivor and all this other stuff. But it may not have been exactly that. Richard Cook, how are you? It is good to see the top cityscape photographer in the world in the room tonight. Always check out Richard Cook's photos. They are magnificent. Plus, he's a deep thinker. Now, anyway, back to John Edwards. John Edwards was interviewed about his downfall after this happened. And he said that as he was ascending with his presidential campaign and in his political career generally, he was very wealthy as an attorney, before. He was, I believe, a personal injury attorney. He made a lot of money doing that. He was also very good looking. And he said that he had heard so many compliments about himself. Everyone was saying, you are this, you're the bomb, you're this, you're that, you're God's gift to the world. And after a while, he started to believe the hype. And he got sucked into it. And he believed every single compliment that he got. And so he began to think that he was invincible, that he was God's gift to the world, that he was the best looking man ever to walk the earth, that he could do no wrong, and all that sort of stuff. And it shrunk his heart, one would argue, by taking in the compliments too much, because his behavior that caused this scandal, destroyed his own career, but more significantly, it hurt his wife and his family and everyone who loved him, and it hurt everyone who had believed in him and supported him. How does that line get drawn, either of you two?
Oleg, you got thoughts?
I got thoughts.
Go ahead. Jump in.
So I think for me, it's a good question as far as how does that line get drawn, because I'm also thinking that in situations when you receive a compliment that compliments whatever skill or quality about who you are that you may not know just yet or fully believe in, where's the line there? So to what degree is the information that I'm receiving has truth to it all? You know, for example, if I tell the two of you that you are exceptional communicators, but neither one of you believes in it, do you choose to accept that, even though it may be a form of reality to the outside world, but it's not a form of reality to you? And so I think partially what comes to my mind is that I think there is, in my opinion, there's a level of self-worth that I go through in order for me to accept the compliment for what it is and try and identify, well, is this true and is this not? Because I have received many different types of compliments, but yet I don't choose to accept all of them and commit them to heart, so to speak, because I don't believe in some of them either just yet, or I don't believe in some of them, period.
How do you know when someone is complimenting you and they're just sucking up?
Well, I think it's a feeling. I think it's, at least for me, personally speaking, I've come to a point where I'm able to tell the difference between someone who is authentically giving you a compliment and someone who is giving you a compliment just so they can break through X, Y, and Z layer to get to some other component that's actually going to help them. For example, I'll give you a perfect example. I'm sure this happens to the two of you as well as many of the other people that are on this discussion right now. On LinkedIn, I don't know how many requests I get, but quite a bit on a daily basis. And I have to go through every single one and say, accept, decline, etc. There are some people that connect and truly have no intentions but wanting to connect and learn more about who you are and finding ways to support you. There are other people who blatantly want to connect with, comment about a previous episode or a previous article, and then immediately go to the ask. Okay, great episode yesterday with Scott and Casey. I would love to be a guest on your podcast. I don't know who this person is. I've never met them in my life. And I think for me, it's I believe in creating a space for other people, and especially those that I haven't met. But I also understand that this is a form of responsibility at this point. This is no longer about, kind of just open the space to everyone, but it is about, yes, creating that opportunity for everyone, but also being selective as far as which energies truly align.
Yep. So
I think that's where I choose and draw the line. And that for me comes from a feeling that I experience I don't know how else to describe it. Casey, you might have a similar perspective on this, but I feel like it's one of those where you just know that there is an ask ready to happen behind the verbiage that's being used in the message itself. Or even like a phone conversation, I could sense the tone and then I could sense that there's a form of agenda. that's being followed.
You sound like a New Yorker. Casey, what do you have to say?
So going back to John Edwards and your question there, and here's how I would answer it is when Oleg brought up the point just now about whether we believe we believe the compliment, and that word, whether we believe it is important. As I was prepping and getting ready for this talk, I was thinking about, we have a squirrel looking for a nut. I was thinking about, what am I looking for? What am I searching for? What are we all searching for? And I realized I'm searching for more wealth. I'm searching for more happiness. I mean, we could list everything we want: fame, fortune. Some people want love. We want relationship. We want companionship. Fill in the blank. Right? For me, it's more stature. It's more financial wealth. It's certain accomplishments I have, which I've shared with Scott and Oleg privately and publicly, and the work I want to do in business, which is great. That there's nothing wrong with what I want. And I'm going to tie this back to gratitude, but and to John Edwards. But when I think about what it is I want, there's a certain level of attachment. And I've been trying to understand what the Buddha meant by attachment and how it's tied to suffering. And I just realized it this week, and it's only taken me a few years to understand this. And I have like 1% of it understood, just starting. But that is that I feel incomplete. And I think humans feel incomplete. That's why we go to the fill in the blank, the tanning salon, we go on vacations, people do drugs, we go money, we buy the car, and so on. And we're literally making these things as idols, as gods, as whatever you want to call it. And once I get to this, then I will be complete. And I think John Edwards probably felt, well, God, man, look what everyone's saying about me, but there's probably more I could. Yeah, I'm going to go have an affair. And once I get that woman, or once I do that, or once I get that office, then I'll be complete. And as we know, you're never complete. We're never, if that's the way that you're looking for it. And as much money as I make in life, I'm realizing I will always feel incomplete. Now, where does this belief, back to Oleg's point, the B word, belief, it comes from, we were programmed. It comes from original sin. It comes from the Bible. It comes from the media. But there literally is this feeling in the world, particularly in America, that there's something wrong with us from the beginning. I mean, the doctor smacks us in the beginning, right? There's something wrong with us. And so for me, when I think about John Edwards, when I think about that, I have really realized that I have had an attachment to certain things that if I don't get that success or that fame or that woman or that whatever, that notch on the belt, that will make it complete. And if I don't get that, I'll be incomplete for the rest of my life and in purgatory. And so what I've been trying to do is when someone compliments me, I literally just say, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm bolder now. Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. Like, thank you. That makes me feel really good. But also, I think one way that I'm not getting a big head is to realize that I'm complete in and of myself. I am complete here. And it's so hard. You have to meditate on it, close your eyes. I literally have to feel alignment in my body. I have to feel the gears in my body. Just, you're complete, Casey. It's not that I'm better. It's not that I'm bigger. It's not that I'm cooler. It's just, I'm complete. So that compliment is nice. It's great. And I really appreciate it. But I don't let it go to my head, because I'm letting things go to my head because I think I'm incomplete. So therefore, I'm going to do something else.
Well, I want to ask a question about that.
Please.
I don't feel complete. I like feeling incomplete, actually, because that gives me drive. And I love having drive. I love the relentlessness of my drive. I enjoy having that. And that's not even me just arguing for the sake of being a devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
That's actually how I feel. I don't know that I would ever want to feel complete. And so, what would you say to someone like me who's not even seeking completion, who actively doesn't want to be complete? To me, if I felt complete, I would feel like I just wanted to keel over and die.
I would ask this, do you suffer? Do you feel pain in being incomplete?
Pain is the source of drive. There's a certain amount of pain or a certain amount of discomfort or of negative, of absence or of something pushing that leads to that drive.
So
I wouldn't want to be without it.
So let me put it this way, I guess. So I think the difference is that you are not, I think where it's healthy, that incompleteness is you are not striving to be complete and attached to an outcome. I, Scott, have to attain X in order to have self-worth, to be complete, to rest and settle. I don't think that's what you're doing. I know that where I have been in an unhealthy spot in my mind is saying, I have to make the certain amount of money. I have to attain a certain amount of thing. Otherwise, I am not complete. I am not worthy. I am less. So maybe we have different definitions of incomplete. I'm not saying that your drive should be stymied. It sounds like it's a healthy thing. For me, it's in the incompleteness. I was trying to make it complete in an unhealthy way and ignoring my own strength. I don't think you, Scott, are ignoring your strength. I think while we're in this matrix and you're in this world, you're kind of just having fun, getting things done and meeting people and having experiences, which sounds very healthy to me. That's how I would answer your question.
Oleg, whose side are you on?
Neither.
Casey or mine?
Neither. I'm more so exploring a question that Caleb actually just posed here. He said, does completion necessarily mean you no longer try? Does it mean you can't continue to seek? And I'm wondering to what degree there's truth in that comment for me, because I'll look at it through this way. So I don't necessarily look at my life through complete or incomplete. I more so look at it, I think, in the sense of fulfillment. Am I fulfilled? Which could be, I guess, somehow tied to feeling complete and feeling incomplete. Winnie had mentioned this thing. She said, are we ever complete as lifelong learners? So in my opinion, I think learning is a decision. It's a decision that I make. Is it available to everyone as far as the opportunity goes? Maybe, maybe not. I have no way of answering that. I think to a degree for me, I choose to look at that as something that I'm actively participating in, but I also understand that there are times where I choose not to take their learning process for granted, because when I stop learning, I literally stop learning. So it truly is a choice within all of that, and that's something I choose to be grateful for. But to go back to the two of you, I think I don't look at life through that lens. I don't look at life through incomplete or complete. I look at life at almost like at chapters. Here's a chapter right now that I'm learning about unconditional love. The next one I might be learning about what trust looks like. So I just progress from one chapter to another without really thinking that there is going to be this ultimate level that I'm going to achieve, because I don't think that's ever possible. I think there are levels of mastery that I may achieve within that can help me gain a deeper perspective into what trust and all these other things look like. But I also understand that to a degree, in my opinion, most, if not maybe all of these things are like an onion. You get to one layer and then there's a layer within that. And then there's a layer within that.
Let me be clear. Complete doesn't mean completed, right? Complete doesn't mean completed and finished. So to Caleb's question and to Laura, it doesn't mean you stop learning or you stop doing things. For me, complete means I am good. I am worthy. I have peace. And what I'm searching for, when I really think about what it is I'm searching for, I realize that it's inside me. I mean, when you really think about what we want, I know we want to be ambitious. We want to attain things. We want excitement. We want this. But I think the most part is we want a level of peace. We want a level of alignment. Sure, pressure helps us to move forward. It helps, it pushes us and so on. I'm not saying there's a lack of pressure, a lack of motivation, or anything along those lines. I mean, pain does help, but life is not always happy. There's pain, there's up, and there's down, of course. What I'm getting at is that there's a certain level of peace and confidence and alignment that lets me enjoy happiness and lets me persevere through pain. So complete is not completed as in done. Complete is that I'm good enough and I can do this.
It's interesting though that you say that. First of all, before I go any further, I want to say hello to someone we just love having come in here every week. Yeah, Oleg, you knew who it was. Melody, thank you again for being here. It always is such a delight to see you. Laura says creativity can come from wholeness and a rich experience of being alive. That is such a Laura Staley remark. I love it. And, you know, Casey, you are saying something, again, I find almost alien. And part of what I find so fascinating about these conversations is that I really do get exposed to ways of thinking that I take for granted within myself or not. Or it doesn't even occur to me that someone may feel this way, and they put it across so well. And I really learn from that. So I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you bring to the table and what you're bringing to the table tonight. You talk about peace. One of my fundamental drives is as a protector. That's one of my most profound self-identifiers too. It's interesting. For instance, a lot of people I know are very pacifistic, and they're people that I am intellectually or otherwise aligned with, or they are very anti-violence. One thing I have actually no problem with under certain circumstances, underline, bold, and italicized, is violence if it is protecting something that I feel needs to be protected. The perfect example is if someone's coming after my husband. I have no problem if he's about to be gay bashed in being violent to defend him and ending that conflict. That's the protector in me coming out. It's relentless, and it is a core part of who and what I am. The people, when I lead an organization, I view them as my people, and I view it as my responsibility, among other things, to protect them. If there is an asteroid strike on this planet, you want to be on my team. You will survive because I will protect you. And so I think one of the things I find very shocking, and it actually takes me back to hear you say, Casey, and I don't put you down or anything because of this, or if anything, I'm putting myself down, is the idea that someone would want peace. I wouldn't. That would take away take away part of my reason for existence. Throw me down the river, man. You achieve a happy world, I'll be gone.
Okay, let's run with this. So there.
Oh boy.
This is great, Scott. Thanks for bringing that up. I want to throw some. I went to college in the 90s. I'm telling you how old I am. And they're at UC Berkeley here in California. And there was a group, there were older hippies, homeless folks, and they would, this group of guys, and they lived on campus. You saw them everywhere. They wore skirts and dresses. They had long beards. I mean, total hippie all the way. And one of them was called himself the Hate Man. And you always wondered why. They would play drums at night and so on. And it turns out he was a former New York Times reporter, apparently award-winning, did an acid trip in the 70s or something, threw it all away and went to Berkeley. And his point was he wanted all of the hate in the world, this is how the story goes, to be focused on him. So there was no hate. And everyone else could live in peace. And he wanted all hate to come into him. He was unique guy. So I ask you, Scott, is this identity that you have, I don't know if it's similar to that, maybe I'm wrong to say that, but is it sort of like you feel the strength that you have, that you can deal with negative emotions, you can deal with what other people would be fearful of, because you just have that strength. Maybe even you thrive on it while other people collapse in front of it.
Caleb asks, similarly, is it not the peace within yourself that allows you to act as a protector to others? And I would say no. I don't feel peace inside. I don't feel bad about not having it either. I don't seek it. Now, I will say, I do not seek to have all of the hate of the world put on me. And I know you weren't asking that.
That's wrong. You don't want that.
No, I'm not seeking that much excitement and
so
stuff
what
in my
if
life.
in place of peace, what if I said, Scott, what if I said alignment? What if I said connectedness?
I would say connectedness, yes. I do feel that yes, connectedness, I would say. Connectedness is not necessary. To me, when I hear the word peace, I think of calmness, I think of relaxation, or I think of an inner warmth, or an inner, like, still waters, or maybe gently rippling waters. I think of a river or a meadow. That ain't the world I live in, and that's not the mental space that I have any desire to occupy. That, to me, would be a version of hell. And so I do think that the alignment, and by the way, that's one of the issues I've always had with the traditional concepts of heaven, is that it sounds horrendous to me. It really does. But but I do think that the word alignment and connectedness with who and what I am, or what Providence has created my set of characteristics to be in this world, yes, I would say that is something that I want.
Well, and so peace, then maybe it's a level of connectedness with yourself. It's a level of alignment. It's essentially, you feel good enough, you feel worthy enough to protect, to take on that role.
I never thought about it in terms of worthiness or not. You're coaching me right here on live podcast on StreamYard. What is this? What is happening in my life? This wasn't supposed to be the way the world works. I will say that maybe, I do feel like, when there are crises or when there are emergencies, I do flip into a mode. And it's natural for me, and people respond accordingly in my experience. And I feel very comfortable doing that. Do I feel worthy? I guess I must, on some level, whether it's subconscious or not, I feel confident. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. I certainly don't cower. That's not me at all.
Yeah. Well, I'll also add on to it. I think there's something that, Casey, you brought up as far as that story of the person, wanting to kind of experience all the hate that there is so other people wouldn't have to experience it themselves. I think it also goes back to the point of, for example, when it comes to adversity, and I'm not saying I'm that person for everyone, but I will say that there are enough people that come to me and just ask for different perspectives. Like, how do you reframe this? How do you look at adversity differently? But that's only because I've accepted that as a personal mission within my life. So I also think that in that situation, and the same is true of the two of you in your own respective areas, when someone is seeking a perspective or guidance or whatever it is, for me, it also boils down to what is it that I'm trying to pass on to them? Am I trying to pass on a space that they are constantly dependent on, or am I trying to pass on a set of tools which they can develop through their own experience and help them better understand that? So I'm with you on that as far as being able to, what's the right word? Like, absorb some of that pressure. But at the same time, I think there's also, like, for me, there's a responsibility I carry within that. Yeah. And it's that, okay, I'm happy to kind of, be here and absorb it as it comes. But at the same time, I'm not here by any means to say, okay, Casey, this is the way you've got to live life afterwards. Or the same thing is, for Scott. So that's where I think there's, for me, the line to be drawn between being the personality who can deal with X, Y, and Z circumstances, but then within that, what is the responsibility that you carry?
So how tying this back to gratitude, I think, and complete, I think I raised some ire with the term complete, and I didn't mean to confuse folks. I didn't mean to confuse anyone.
Those are fighting words.
I know. But when I think about the notion of gratitude and the theme of today, for me, what I think when I don't feel grateful for things, it's often because of a sense of lack within me, a sense of incompleteness. Something's wrong with me. And so and I've just been thinking as we've been talking through it and listening to everyone here and listening to the questions and comments that came in, for me, when I'm able to look inside and not look outside, fame, fortune, wealth, Ferraris, whatever that is, when I'm able to look inside and see myself as complete, again, not completed, not done, but complete and good enough, that then helps me be grateful for that I am connected, that I am complete, that I am good enough. And then that helps me change my perspective on life, makes me calmer, makes me more courageous, makes me stronger, makes me less fearful. And so let me kind of put the ribbon on the bow there to kind of connect how I see this desire for being complete with gratitude, and realizing that I can look externally for it, like maybe John Edwards was looking externally for it, but realizing that it's in me. And how I find it in me is going to peace. Or if we don't like a quiet spot, if that's boring, going to alignment, going to connectedness, just kind of realizing that, taking a quick moment to realize that I am enough right now. And then I can accomplish what I want. I can learn more. I can get something done.
So
do you guys feel appreciated in life? Both of you?
Am I with my family at 10 p.m. on night when the house is dirty and and the kids are yelling? It all stems from me. And in all seriousness, when the dishes are dirty, the kids aren't doing what I'm saying, my wife is giving me the stink eye, it's up to me to appreciate myself. And I've realized that it's a reflection of how I'm feeling about myself. So if I am feeling unappreciated, I don't get it right all the time. But now I go, wait a minute, Casey, if you're not feeling unappreciated, don't point the finger at them. What's going on inside? How are you feeling inside? And I sometimes leave the room and just have to take accountability for that.
Scott, do you feel appreciated in life?
That's a multidimensional question that I will answer in a multidimensional way, but with as much brevity as I can, which is none. So first of all, one place I feel appreciated is at home. Yes, I feel appreciated. That cooking that I talked about with my husband, that's appreciation and love that he shows every day. Do I feel appreciated generally in the world? I feel appreciative of my life. I feel appreciative of for the experiences that I have, for the ability to experience things that I have. Going back to earlier, this sort of metaphysical appreciation, I am grateful and I feel appreciated by the universe for allowing me to exist and for giving me what it has. That's a very abstract way to think about being appreciated, but it's one that for me, at least, is very real. However, do I feel appreciated? Many of you have shared this story on this show before and in speeches I've given. Part of my narrative has been feeling unappreciated professionally in certain circumstances. And I have mixed feelings. For instance, as I've told you all, I think both of you are familiar with the story and some audience members are. I had a boss once who told me, Scott, in front of my staff and in front of my peers, oh, Scott, when you talk, you're so stupid. You should just put a gun in your mouth and shoot. Do I feel appreciated by her? Did I feel appreciated in that moment? Hell no. And was I going to sit in my office? And again, I'm not arguing with you at all, because really, in most cases, I think that you're right, Casey. But in that moment, was I going to say, what was I doing wrong? No.
No, shaking my head at such a comment. Jeez. I mean,
so no, I did not feel like I should be held accountable for that.
What a crazy comment.
Yeah, that was crazy. And I totally place accountability for that on her.
Yeah.
But I take accountability on how I respond to it and how I have responded to it and what I've made of it. That is totally on me. That being said, lack of appreciation is something again, when it has been such a dominant theme in my career that I've actually, in an odd way, come to appreciate lack of appreciation, because that's also given me that drive, that fuel, that I actually, that fire that I enjoy having, that I've come to love about myself. So I think that, and Oleg and Melody, yes, you are absolutely right. That was a reflection of who she was. Yes, thank you for that, acknowledging that. Do I feel appreciated? Not always. Do I think that that's a bad thing? Which is, to me, the question behind the question. No. For me, at least, that's not always a bad thing. It would be a bad thing if it had a toxic impact on my life, or if it were something that I couldn't escape and was really affecting my self-esteem or a sense of who I was. For instance, if my husband didn't, I worked in the domestic violence space for a while, and the lack of appreciation that the survivors of that received from their abusers, there's simply, that was not anything other than life destroying and horrible. I mean, perhaps some of them get out of it and they become these incredibly strong people, but still it's a little bit too, in my opinion, too an overly high price to pay for inner strength and resilience, considering what some of them went through. So that's my response to the question, but you cannot throw that sort of thing out there and then get remarks from people like Melody and Caleb and all that sort of stuff without answering the question. You're not going to get away. I will not appreciate or show any gratitude if you try and say, sometimes I don't have an opinion, because I'm demanding it, as are the people.
All right. Well, this time I truly don't have an opinion. I'm just kidding.
Liar.
I think for me, for a good portion of my life, I did not feel appreciated. I will tell you what changed is I felt that when I got a better understanding of my purpose for this particular chapter of my life, that's where I think the appreciation started to match that particular thing. I think living in times where I didn't have a good understanding of what that purpose was, and just all the different complications that come within that. One of those is constantly juggling the opinions of so many other people as far as what your purpose should look like and what you need to be doing in life. In my opinion, when I was able to not necessarily break away from it, but really started to look at it through the lens of, these are just opinions from other people who may or may not know truly who I am. So that's where I think my level of appreciation started to rise even more. And I felt a lot more appreciated because I had a greater understanding of who I was and what it was that I was trying to make, as far as the impact on myself to begin with, and then the impact on other people. Now, are there conversations where people don't understand who I am and what it is that I do? And does it lead to feelings of feeling less appreciated? Absolutely. In fact, I'll never forget this time. Well, never is a long time. Let me be cautious of my words. There's one time in particular, I went to a basketball game with a great mentor of mine. We went to see University of Michigan versus Purdue, I believe. It was a men's basketball game year before COVID. And I remember him and I were sitting there, and we haven't seen each other for 6 to 8, maybe even 10 years, maybe even longer than that. We were sitting down and we started talking about life and the different things that we're doing in life. And he broke it down to me as far as this next chapter of his life was all about retirement. It was about helping his son grow in X, Y, and Z areas. And he started to ask me questions about what it is that I was doing. And I started to describe to him the space through overcoming odds and all that stuff that I was involved with. And he just simply said, I don't get it. I repeated again, try to use different words, or I would use different points of reference for him to understand. And he still said, I don't understand. And it was in that moment I felt as if I wasn't appreciated. I was immediately drawn into that hole of okay, is what you're doing actually valuable? Is it making a difference? And can it be something that makes a difference if there is someone else that doesn't truly understand? So as real as that moment was, and as heartbreaking it was to hear that from someone who I still look at as a great mentor of mine that really taught me the fundamentals behind having a strong work ethic, I also just realized that, well, maybe this is just one of those moments where it has to be.
Yeah.
It just is what it is, you know?
Well, and I do sort of have to wonder, one of the people I look up to, Jeff Bezos, when he was talking about Amazon and his vision for that, I sort of have to wonder how many people just didn't understand. And whether that had anything to do with the quality of his vision. We all get in those spaces. I certainly have, where particularly if it is someone who I respect or has had authority over my life, even if it's psychological authority that I've given them, that I have not felt appreciated when they haven't understood something that I've said or a vision that I have had. But what you're pointing to, Oleg, to me, and I would be curious as to your thoughts around it, as well as Casey's, is to what extent then does, whether we feel appreciated or not, really just exist as an experience that is bounded by our own mental state that we, if we are fully able to, can control or not.
Yeah. Oleg, I'll say there, the issue for me, his comment is there was a duty of his, whether he knew it or not, to literally just have interpersonal skills, base level interpersonal skills, base level compassion. And for him to say, I don't understand, in my opinion, the response, considering your background with him, the response is, I don't understand, but tell me more. I don't understand, but how will this impact you? I sense you're excited about it. Tell me more, right? So, because there are things I just can't appreciate and I don't understand. I've never been a big video gamer. I just sitting around all day doing that, I just can't. So if my son, for example, were to be really into video games, it would take some effort for me. I don't know if I don't know if I'd ever be able to play. And he's interested in some things now, which I just gotta be honest, I'm not totally into, but I feign interest, or I am not interested in the topic itself, but I'm interested in him. Of course, I love him. I want him to, right? I'm interested in him. So you've probably dealt with it, but the fact that this person didn't show that interest in you can't fault him for not understanding overcoming odds. Fine. Fine. But where I would course correct him would be to say, show interest in Oleg. And so I don't know if that is you not being appreciated. I think literally the issue's on him, and him not, him coming from a place of fear, coming from a place of holier than thou, or coming from a place of, oh God, Oleg, really? Why don't you do X, Y, Z instead of overcoming odds? So I don't know if it was I don't think you should feel unappreciated. I think really the onus is on him to kind of show love to you, as opposed to showing the opposite.
Melody said something that I want to make sure that we address. And I know, Melody, that you self-corrected during this comment, but it's something that you hear a lot. And so I feel like it's important to not exclude it from our conversation. Is that when you said you felt like you were a burden? And then, like I said, you self-corrected during the same comment. So I don't want to put on you a remark that really was not reflecting your intent. But it raised an interesting point, which is the extent to which appreciation or gratitude play out in situations in which someone is being perhaps subjective about it, a burden. B, what does it mean to make someone else, or at least to present your feeling state about someone else as a burden, and a situation that I feel where they really might objectively be a burden. And I say this as neutrally as possible. Let's say someone is in a vegetative state. They're a family member and they're someone that you've loved, and you will love them and appreciate them for as long as they are quote unquote alive. And I say that for the hypothetical of being in a vegetative state, and what is living and not are things that's probably a different conversation. It almost certainly is, but it would be hard to argue that someone that's in a vegetative state who will never come out of it is not, on some level, as tragic and sad as that situation is not a burden to the people that are their caretakers or in their lives that want to be there for them, because they have nothing that they can ever conceivably offer in return. That's the indescribable tragedy of the situation that they're in. And so then there's that situation, and then there's a situation where we choose to, and hopefully none of us do this, or if we do, we course correct when we discover it happens, when we present our relationship with someone such that that person is presented, or that we present our feelings about that person as them being a burden. I am very careful about how I frame the latter. To me, the idea of, if I were to be told, and fortunately this has never happened to me, but it might one day, that I made someone feel like a burden, that would cut me to the core. Because that is a situation where the person is utterly dehumanized. It's basically me telling someone that they have no value whatsoever, that they're literally like sack that I have to carry on my back for no reason whatsoever. And I strongly object to describing another imagery. Seriously.
Yeah, right.
So what do you all think about those sets of remarks? Or do you think that the extreme and sad case of the vegetable who can't feel love back or can't give anything as a quote unquote burden, how do you feel about that?
So, Oleg, do you have thoughts? You want me to go?
I got thoughts, but I'll follow you.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll follow you.
So personally, I don't feel like a burden. I've stopped feeling this way for quite some time now. I don't even buffer the conversation in saying, hey, I don't want you to think that I'm a burden, or I don't want you to feel like I'm being a burden by disclosing X, Y, and Z. I just tell it. I just tell it whatever it is. I think the whole concept of a burden, in my opinion, it goes back on the individual receiving it and then therefore labeling it as a burden themselves.
Well, what if it's like in childhood, though? Right? And Melody's last comment really goes as to that particular situation.
Well, I think, this definitely happened to me many times throughout my own childhood. I think what the difference is have I felt that? Absolutely. Have I called myself or labeled myself a burden? I think so. But at the same time, and Winnie actually brings up a really good point. I love that. So Winnie is actually, I could be wrong, but she's also a lawyer. So we have 3 lawyers in the room, so to speak, which she literally says who defines a burden, and what does that even mean? So I think for me personally, I look at that as far as the concept of burden is inconvenience. And in knowing that, whenever it is that I'm framing whether or not I'm being a burden, I have to understand, or I remind myself that whatever it is that I'm about to express, I'm going to get off of my chest anyway.
Yeah.
So in me framing it to you that I'm going to be a burden by expressing how I feel in X, Y, and Z way, it really doesn't serve me moving forward. Because in my opinion, it doesn't create the opportunity for me to transform out of that experience.
Yeah.
So if I'm experiencing a hardship and I'm calling Casey and I'm saying, hey, Casey, these are the things that have happened. I don't want to be a burden because I know that you're busy. You have all these other things, but would you be willing to listen to me? So I'm in a way, I'm putting that unnecessary, in my opinion, I'm putting unnecessary pressure on him, when the reality of the matter is, in knowing him and knowing how accepting he is, he's going to listen anyway. Now, if he doesn't have the time, he may or may not express to me saying, hey, I got 5 minutes or I got 10 minutes. But I think there is a critical point, in my opinion, in how you choose to buffer that conversation. What is it that you actually say, and how is it that you actually say it before stating that point in hand?
I say that a lot, Oleg. I even say it to my wife, like, oh, I won't bore you with the details. And my wife jumped in once and said, I want to hear the details. Mm-hmm. And if I don't have time, give me the shorter version. But I, Casey, say that a lot because I don't want to bore people. I don't want to be a burden. And I still do it. I'm a little better at it. One area I see this a lot is at Leave Law Behind, where I help unhappy attorneys leave the law. One of the main elements is an informational interview. And when attorneys go through the process and they're looking to transition from being a lawyer to anything else, content marketing, operations, account manager, sales, every other job that's in the world. So when they're making that jump and that leap, one of the best bridges they can do is get a handle on their skills and strengths, understand the jobs they want, and then go do informational interviews with people. Mm-hmm. Hey, Scott, I know you're in the content creation space. I've really looked at my skills and strengths. You're a friend of Casey's. He suggested we get coffee or just a quick talk. And I'd really like to learn more about content marketing. Is that something for me, content creation? And then also, if you have time on Be Sensitive to Your Network, is there anyone else I can talk to? Right? That's the spiel. And you, as Scott, are either, hey, I'm busy. See you later. I don't care. Or most often, you're like, of course, I'll take some time. Now, there is such a resistance in the Leave Law Behind community to sending that email because they feel they're going to impose on Scott.
Yeah.
And, well, I don't want to take time. He's got family. He's got this. He said, da, 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 da. What they don't realize is that the informational interview literally is, hey, Scott, talk about yourself. Tell me about your day-to-day. They don't realize that, one, Scott is like, I get to talk about myself. Two, someone wants to hear about me. I'm flat. Scott's flattered. Mm-hmm. And three, that Scott actually wants to help. Like, you're looking forward to it. Sure, you got a bunch of stuff to do, but 2 to 2:30, not 2 to 8:30, 2 to 2:30 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon, I'm going to meet with Casey's friend and I'm going to do an informational interview. And if I really click, I'm going to give advice. You see where I'm going with this, right? And Casey's friend, you should go talk to Oleg. Let me make an intro. I mean, Scott, you do this all the time anyway. But lawyers are so resistant to this because they think they're going to impose on Scott. And it goes to a point earlier you made in the conversation, Oleg, about how you can give, but you don't want to receive, right? There's that burden. Oh no, I'm fine. I don't want to receive the compliment. I've been that way. And I've realized that in order to give, there has to be a receive. And actually, and I'm not giving you a hard time, Oleg, by not receiving that compliment, you're not letting that person give it to you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And they want to give it. Think about when you want to give a compliment. Like when I talk about Scott or when I talk about you or I talk about everyone and I'm glowing, like I want to say those words because it makes me feel good. I know it makes you feel good. And I want that person to know how I want Scott to know that he's engaging. Oleg, I want you to know that I think you're fearless. Right. So if you don't accept it, I can't give it. It's incomplete. So I'll just say that to the burden point, I have learned and I have felt that I'm a burden throughout so much of my life. And as Leave Law Behind, as I've run Leave Law Behind, and I've been able to kind of extract and see these lawyers thinking they're a burden when they're really not, I've reflected that back on me and said, hey, Casey, you got to learn this for your own way. And it's actually made me a little bit more bolder in a good way as I've asked for things from people.
I also do want to add one thing about that too, that you hinted at, but I want to just target a little bit more explicitly.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to give someone a compliment, especially when it's a sincere one. Now, there have been times, one time I was, for instance, in a executive or a senior team meeting of an organization that I worked for, and the boss basically ordered us all to compliment someone else who was on the senior team who we all hated. That compliment was not sincere, and if she didn't want to take it, I would have been more than happy with to withdraw it. But generally, if I'm giving a compliment and the person doesn't take it, there's actually a component of insult that is embedded in that. I'm like, what are you saying? You don't think my judgment is good?
Right.
I'm saying you're good at this, so you think I'm an idiot when I'm sitting around and complimenting you on this, that, and the other? And that is something for us to be thinking about. Just as when you're talking about the idea of burden, what makes you think when you're all afraid of being a burden? And to me, that says a lot about the toxicity of legal culture in the United States, that people think that, and the way lawyers interact with each other, particularly in big law settings, that I believe probably leads to some of this, or corporatized or large organizational environments. So, but that's a whole, again, other discussion that we'll have on another show that you'll be back for. The overall, this idea though of being burdened, what makes me assume, it goes as something Oleg and I talk about a lot on the show. What makes me assume that I know what you're thinking? Sometimes we, as Oleg and I say over and over, we don't need to have an opinion. Let that person decide whether I'm going to be a burden or not.
Yeah.
Not me making that decision for them. I don't know what's going on in their mind.
And that's a level of projection, which is a psychological term, where we're literally projecting meaning onto. So Oleg sort of, maybe his eyebrow twitches. Oleg's thinking about something else. He's not paying attention. I literally project onto Oleg as a screen the fact that he's not paying attention to what I'm thinking about. He's distracted. He doesn't care. And I'm worthless. I'm not worthy. All of that, right? When all happened is Oleg twitched his eyebrow, right? But I'm giving it that meaning.
So I want to do something actually before we go into the next theme or topic, and that's create a moment for the three of us and for anyone else that's joining right now. And that's considering our own journeys of receiving compliments and the challenges that we faced in doing them. We'll start with Scott.
What do you want me to do?
What?
I don't know.
You're assuming.
Exactly.
What do you admire or respect about Casey?
That's a tough one because there's so much.
Thank you.
As I've told Casey to his face, and he's going to just have to accept it. And as everyone, I'm sure, watching this, including some of the great minds that have been in this audience tonight, Winnie, Melody, Caleb, Laura, Casey, they're like this too. Casey is an intellectual giant. I find it formidable. I find it impressive. And I find it highly engaging and causes my neurons to fire. And I think that he also is surprisingly humble. And I really respect and appreciate and have gratitude for that, because a lot of people, trust me, having been a lawyer for a long time, who are lawyers and who are legit are intellectual giants, ain't that humble about it. Okay. I'll say the rest
Scott,
behind closed doors.
Scott, I thank you very much.
I'll expand upon that. So when Casey and I met however long ago, I think one of the first things that stood out to me about you, Casey, is you're real. And, considering that we have a group of current and former lawyers, let's define what that means.
Because I'm fake. I don't even really.
No, but in all jokes aside, what really made me think about why it is that you're real is that from that very first conversation that you and I had, you really showed up as who you were. You were not trying to be anything else, anything more, like you weren't trying to express in any form. And I found that to be something that I respect, because you truly showed up as who you were. Now, whether or not I was going to accept you for who you were, that was not your journey to go on. That was my journey. But I think the fact that you showed up as that, it just gave me even a better perspective and just a reminder. Like, if he's doing that, therefore I can do the same. So in that, the thing that you mentioned about projections, and I'm a huge believer that each and every single one of us are in some way or form reflections of one of each other.
Yeah.
And so when you're able to show up and when you're able to do that, it gives me the possibility to explore those things on my own. And so I really applaud you for that. And even how you like now, you're the same damn person, just with different insights, continuous evolution and everything. Like, that's fascinating.
Thank you. I've never thought of it that way. That just blew my mind, what you just said there about how when if kind of inspire, just being yourself and inspiring people in that way. I never would have connected those dots. So thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, both of you.
What do you admire and respect about Scott Mason?
Yeah, so that's an easy one for me. It's the intellectual heft that he has, which he said about me. It's likewise with him. Just the smarts, the sharpness, the color, the detail. I think when you add to it is the presence. There's a presence around Scott, and some people have a presence that is like the woman that Scott mentioned, who came down the stairs at the award show with the jewels, and that there's a presence, but that took 5 hours to put together, and it's take the dress off and the hair and the diamonds, and it's less there, right? I mean, she's sort of fabricating a presence. Scott creates the gown and the diamonds and the sparkles and the background music and the confetti and the fireworks and just everything, but all from within. He doesn't need it from anywhere else. It's just that energy which emits through a laptop camera, so it's that intellectual heft, which is just, which you're going to learn something. And it's just the presence of it all. It's blown me away from the first LinkedIn message you wrote. I said, "Oh, wow, this." I remember thinking, "Wow, this is." I literally had to prepare to get on the phone with you just by the energy in your LinkedIn message. So, it's that combination which just continues to blow my mind.
So now Oleg always tries to slide away.
Right.
Okay, go to him next.
So, what do I admire about Oleg? And so the first thing that, and I've mentioned it among many things, is the fearlessness. Oleg, I'm older than you are. I think more set in my ways, have been programmed, and there's a level of I'm at a point at 47 years old where I'm at that point, like, you unlearn all or most of, in the second half of your life, you unlearn all or most of what you learned in the first half. You're not going to have that problem because you're so way ahead of me, and just so fearless in what you're looking for and your intention, that the second half of your life is just going to be building on the first. You're not going to have any, what we call in technical debt. You're not going to have any awareness debt or consciousness debt. And so there's a level of fearlessness, which doesn't mean you're not afraid. It doesn't mean that you've overcome everything. It means that you move forward and you do the work to overcome it, or you move forward despite it, even if you just mitigated it. And so in addition just to your smarts and your kindness and your compassion and your ability to orchestrate things and connect people, I can go on and on. I just am in awe and appreciate the way that you move forward despite all of the boogeymen that can come into your way.
No, thank you for that. And I appreciate that about you. And like I said, you giving me the ability to see that, what it's like to show up. And it's a difficult journey. It's been a difficult journey to continue to pursue what you believe to be true when there are people surrounding you that don't believe the same things that you believe. And I found that through my journey, what's become important is really cultivating a group of people, whatever that number looks like. For me, it's probably less than 10, that truly believe in me. And something that you mentioned in regard to that mentor
Yeah.
It's like, who cares what you're doing now? It's more so like, do you believe in them as a person and have the level of patience that even though they may not be quote unquote pursuing the right thing, in knowing who they are, they will figure it out after a while.
And to Scott's point where he mentioned earlier about pain and ups and downs and it drives, I mean, I cannot wait for the obstacle in your life in 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, to come around. I mean, I can't wait. No rush on life, but like you're going to handle things. I look back at, having children or the '08 recession or the bar exam or issues I had with law, just things that totally stressed me out at 25 and 30 and 35 and 40. And I just big and small. And you've done such work and have such a better relationship with fear and obstacles than I think 99.9% of the people in the world. That not that you won't get knocked down, but I mean, getting up is just no problem. You're just so well prepared.
So I'm going to close this out before we move on to the final segment here. And I will begin by saying, Melody, let me just use this as an example or as an opportunity to just express one bit of appreciation that I have for you. And that is, not only would you be thoughtful and kind enough to say something like you did in that comment, but that you come back week after week and you bare your heart and your soul and you throw out your feelings and your intellect too. And that has impacted us week after week. And I'm grateful for that. Oleg, I'm grateful. I think that, again, where do I begin? Your curiosity, your intelligence, your sense of humor. And as someone who, as I mentioned earlier, who has struggled with people not believing in me, you have. There are a lot of gifts that you bring into this world. Being a squirrel looking for a nut is one of them. One other great gift that I think you've brought to this world, actually 2 sets of gifts, have been your incredible podcasts. Oleg, would you mind scrolling about them? Because people need to know about them. And they are something that I'm really grateful for. Really, anyone who's listened to these episodes will understand the stories that you've given people the space to share have changed lives and have changed their worlds.
Yeah, these are 2 shows that I've started a little while ago. One is called Overcoming Odds, and the other one's called The Power of Your Story, which I'll be taking on the road here in the next 5 to 6 months. I actually renewed my passport today.
Congratulations.
So, that was the first step in it all. But, for me, I think what really drives everything and why I do what I do is I felt that throughout my own journey and throughout my own life, it was a struggle. It was a struggle to find purpose. It was a struggle to articulate meaning. And part of it came down to not having a supportive enough community of people who believed in you regardless of what it is that you were doing. And that's what I wanted to do, is I wanted to create this space where people can really connect with each other wherever it is that they are along their journey, but be able to experience that sense of community, that sense of belonging. Because for me, in my opinion, those 2 things are critical in being able to live a life where I feel fulfilled and satisfied and happy and experience joy. Prior to finding many of you, or finding the 2 of you, Laura, and so many other people that join those Saturday calls and have been a part, Nicole, it was a challenge, I felt alone. I felt misunderstood. And I think finding people who support you for who you really are, it adds a different perspective to it all. Like it really makes it that much more impactful for me. And it gives me a complete other level of understanding to what life has to offer.
I love it. Casey, do you want to say anything about yourself, where people can find you, how they can find out about Leave Law Behind, any social media handles?
Yeah, leavelawbehind.com is a great place to find me. You can also find me on LinkedIn, but find me at Leave Law Behind. It's Casey, C-A-S-E-Y, at leavelawbehind.com, or Casey Berman on LinkedIn. I'm connected with Scott and Oleg, so you can track me down that way. Would love to talk to anyone, share ideas. or see how we can collaborate in any way.
And Scott Mason, what about you? Where can we find more about what you do?
So I just live in this world. I just walk around.
Which is enough, by the way.
Which isn't, it's more than enough for this. It's more than enough. I feel complete doing that. But in addition to just walking around the world, speakerscott.com is where you can find out more about me as a professional speaker. And if you all think that I might be entertaining or enlightening or bring a message, particularly with regards to connection with purpose or resilience or any of the other things that you might hear us talking about during these shows, reach out to me via that. I also have a podcast, purposehighway.com is where you can find it. I am also announcing tonight for the first time that a collaborative book, or a book that I'm a collaborator in, is going to be released on April 6th. It is called Gut, Grits, and the Grind. I think it's it's a later volume in a series edited by the wonderful Sally Spencer Thomas and Frank King. And that is a tool guide for men's mental health. I ask everyone to be on the lookout for that. And if you want more information, of course, you can always reach out to me via LinkedIn or Facebook.
Wow. Congrats.
Thank you. Everyone, do we have anything else we want to say in closing?
We do. We have an event that all three of us are going to be a part of called Survive to Thrive, Attitude of Gratitude, as it relates to this topic and everything that we've discussed. So that's going to be hosted through Overcoming Odds, which all three of us are a part of. And that's one thing that I'll pass on to people if anyone's interested. This is going to be streamed in very similar fashion like this to LinkedIn, Facebook, this Sunday, starting at 11 Central Time, and then the Sunday after that. So for anyone that wants to join, we'd love to have you and hear your perspectives and be a part of that discussion.
And you can always find out more about Overcoming Odds at overcomingodds.today. Overcomingodds.today.
Mm-hmm.
One final thing that I will mention along those lines is that in addition to all of this, you might be hearing more from the three of us in other forums in the near future. Keep your ears to the ground, your eyes looking up at the screen. Melody, you'll be watching. Thank you. We will be looking to you. And with that, I want to express gratitude for everyone. You guys are amazing.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you both for being a part of it. And thank you to Melody, Winnie, and Caleb, and everyone else that makes this show possible, because I always try and point out that yes, it's the three of us that choose to create the space, but it's everyone else that also creates the big difference, because we only know what we know. And I'm not afraid of the times where I say I don't know a certain thing, or, for example, times where I don't have an opinion. But having the fact that other people come into this, and some people like Melody show up weekly.
And we are so grateful for that. By the way, if anyone watching tonight enjoyed the show enough to want to leave a comment praising it on Facebook, please go to our Facebook homepage, and we would be very, very grateful for that. That helps get the word out about it. Everyone, have a wonderful evening.